In 2025 alone, over 100,000 tech workers were laid off. More than half of those cuts were explicitly driven by the deployment of artificial intelligence, particularly the shift toward agentic AI that can autonomously operate customer support, logistics, and middle management. When Block cut nearly half of its 10,000-person workforce, CEO Jack Dorsey stated plainly that AI had made those roles unnecessary. Within the next year, he predicted, the majority of companies would reach the exact same conclusion. For a century, the economic establishment has viewed this kind of technological displacement as a temporary, self-correcting friction. John Maynard Keynes and his successors operated on the premise that labor markets naturally rebalance themselves. They relied on the reinstatement effect. Historically, automating old tasks lowers production costs and creates new wealth, which generates new occupations to absorb the displaced workers. The short-term pain is erased by the long-term expansion. A speed mismatch on this scale introduces a structural flaw directly into the product market. If AI replaces workers faster than new roles can reabsorb them, the very consumer demand that firms depend on begins to erode. A 2026 paper by Brett Hemingway Falk and Jerry Toukalis shifts the focus of AI layoffs from a labor market friction to a product market failure. This diagram represents a closed economic sector where competing firms produce goods for a consumer demand pool. To buy those goods, consumers need income, which flows from the firms as wages. Because workers possess a high marginal propensity to consume, these wages provide the primary pipeline filling aggregate demand. When human nodes are replaced by AI, the wage pipeline constricts. This immediately drains the aggregate demand pool, and the revenue returning to the firms eventually chokes off. We can quantify this volume of lost demand per automated task as the variable L. Because there are n competing firms, the demand loss is distributed equally across all of them. A firm that automates only suffers a 1/n fraction of the damage it caused. The rest of the demand destruction spills over onto its rivals. This spillover traps rational firms into cannibalizing their own customer base. To find the source of the trap, we need to construct the equation dictating a single firm's decision to automate one additional task. The private incentive is on the left. The firm captures cost savings, S, but subtracts integration frictions, K, and its perceived demand loss, a 1/n fraction. This gives S minus K minus L over N. On the right, the cooperative optimum correctly subtracts the full demand loss, L. Because competition dilutes the penalty of destroyed demand, each firm systematically underestimates the social cost of its own automation. If AI perfectly substitutes human tasks, the integration friction K vanishes. In this frictionless limit, the situation shifts from a calculation to a game. We can map this onto a payoff matrix. Unilateral restraint is irrational. A firm suffers the revenue drop from rivals' layoffs, but forgoes the cost savings. Automating becomes a strictly dominant strategy. A rational firm must automate to protect its margins. This creates a prisoner's dilemma. All firms automate, demand collapses, and every firm ends up with lower profits than if no one automated at all. In the real world, integration costs prevent an instant collapse, but the welfare consequences remain. Plotting normalized owner surplus against the automation rate shows a peak at the cooperative optimum. Worker income declines linearly as machines replace humans. The Nash equilibrium sits to the right, where both owners and workers earn significantly less. This frontier graph shows the equilibrium strictly southwest of the optimum. Moving back to the cooperative rate makes both workers and owners better off. Highly productive AI could theoretically expand the pie enough to offset this demand destruction. This is the Red Queen effect. Firms adopt the technology symmetrically, so gains cancel out. They accelerate aggressively just to maintain position, deepening the destruction. The gap between equilibrium and the optimum is pure deadweight loss. Better AI doesn't fix the problem, it widens the wedge. We can test standard safety nets against the rigid math of this demand externality. Wages falling as unemployment rises should theoretically slow automation. However, this only delays when the externality activates. It cannot solve the structural dilution of demand loss. Private agreements between firms fail for the same reason. Because automation is strictly dominant, no non-binding agreement among competitors is self-enforcing. Simple profit taxes fail as well. A proportional tax cancels out in the firm's first-order condition, leaving automation incentives unchanged. This brings us to universal basic income, the popular Silicon Valley proposal for an AI-displaced world. UBI operates strictly on profit levels. It raises baseline demand, shifting the entire profit curve up, but the slope of the line, the marginal incentive to automate one more task, remains exactly the same. Furthermore, by raising baseline profits, UBI could attract more entrants, which would increase the number of competitors and further dilute each firm's share of the demand loss. Any intervention that shifts total wealth levels without altering the per-task marginal calculus is mathematically incapable of stopping the arms race. Tinbergen's principle states that a distinct market failure requires a targeted instrument that operates directly on the broken margin. The paper identifies one such remedy, the Pigovian automation tax. This formula forces the automating firm to pay a tax equal to the demand destruction it is externalizing onto its rivals. It aligns the private cost with the social cost. Revenue from this tax can fund retraining to raise the income replacement rate, ultimately shrinking the required tax rate as the economy adapts. The AI layoff trap represents a structural suicide pact between rational entities. Correcting this mathematical externality serves as a prerequisite for preserving the consumer market that makes progress profitable in the first place.